back to the ground with the only free MMA channel that fucking matters, full-time MMA. And I'll say this was the easiest prediction pay-per-view I've had to do so far since I've been even doing a channel. This one I didn't have to do much research on any of these fighters. I already know all of their history pretty much. I already knew where I was going with a lot of these fights. So man, let's just get straight to it. I'll start at the bottom and move up. Jimmy Manuwa versus Volkan Ozdemir. We've got I don't even have the records because I didn't have to do the research. I already knew these guys' fighting history, so I don't even have their exact records. But if you want those, you know where you can get them. UFC.com, fucking SureDog, any place you can get fighter records and rankings. So we got Jimmy Manuwa versus Volkan Ozdemir. Volkan Ozdemir is 2-0 in the UFC. I do know that much. He had a split decision over St. Preux in his UFC debut. Then he fought Misha Cirkunov when he took Misha Cirkunov out in, I believe, 28 seconds, if I'm remembering correctly. It was under a minute for sure. And it was a knockout. Misha Cirkunov rushed in and got clipped up. Jimmy Manuwa, I do not believe, will make the same mistake. He's an experienced striker, Jimmy Manuwa. His only 2 losses in the UFC come to Alexander Gustafsson and Rumble Johnson's, both by second round TKO. Now, could Volkan Ozdemir second round TKO Jimmy Manuwa? Yes. But I don't think he's going to make a mistake and charge in or do anything stupid. I think he's going to be experienced with the striking. I think this will actually be runner-up for fight of the night between Cerrone Lawler. Any of these fights could be fight of the night, honestly. But this one's got this one's got more potential to be knockout of the night than any fight on the card. Jimmy Manuwa versus Volkan Ozdemir. So I'm picking Jimmy Manuwa to actually win by TKO KO versus Volkan Ozdemir. I think he's going to show his experience striking here, and he's going to put Ozdemir away. Now, Lawler-Cerrone. Robbie Lawler versus Donald Cerrone. This was easily the hardest one to choose, the hardest fight to pick. This one's hard. The rest of them were a lot easier than this one. This is the only reason this took more than 5 minutes to make these predictions. So what I'll say is I went back and forth here. I'm going to have to go with Robbie Lawler, and the edge for me on this one, I wouldn't be surprised if it went either way, man. This is what I have as probably fight of the night. This will probably go down as fight of the night unless Jason Knight does some crazy shit on the prelims, which is very possible. Any of these could be fight of the night, but this one's probably the people's fight before going into the fight. So I went ahead and went with Robbie Lawler, and that's because he's had more of a layoff since his knockout loss. Both of these fighters are coming off of knockout losses, vicious knockout losses. But both of these fighters are experienced. Both of these fighters can shake that off. But I'll say Robbie Lawler has had more time off since his knockout loss than Donald Cerrone, who was broken down mentally and physically by Jorge Masvidal in his last fight. And he was knocked out twice versus Jorge Masvidal because the ref let him keep fighting after he got knocked out in the first round. The bell rang. He came back out in the second round and got knocked out again. Jorge Masvidal was giving it to him mentally during the fight too, pointing at him like, yeah, motherfucker, you know you're about to get knocked out again, haha. And then after the fight, got in his head. So yeah, man, Donald Cerrone has just had less of a layoff since getting broken down than Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler got hit with the overhand right. It wasn't like a long dragged out beating. It wasn't like he got knocked out twice. It was just a boom bada sealed the deal versus Tyron Woodley laid him out, and it was just that simple. So I'm going with Robbie Lawler to win this fight. Not only is he had a longer layoff since his knockout loss, he's also been at welterweight longer. He's a more experienced welterweight, so he's a little bit bigger of a guy than Donald Cerrone. I'm just going to go with Robbie Lawler here, man, but I would not be surprised if Donald Cerrone got the job done. But that's just my pick, Robbie Lawler. Chris Cyborg versus Tanya Evinger. Tanya Evinger's making her UFC debut. She's a bantamweight champion coming out of, she's coming out of Invicta, bantamweight champion from Invicta. She's been waiting on her UFC for a shot for a long time, but it turns out there's a story where she pissed off one of the matchmakers, and so they didn't want to sign her too quickly. So now it's looking like they're going to let her in the UFC, but at the cost of getting sacrificed to Chris Cyborg. So I'm picking Chris Cyborg for the W here. This fight and the Manuwa fight are probably the lock of the nights for me. If Chris Cyborg loses this fight, it's going to be absolutely insane. It would, oh boy, would Tanya Evinger be on the map. But yeah, I'm just picking Chris Cyborg to go in here, and then probably Tanya Evinger moving back down to bantamweight in the UFC after this loss, if she takes the loss to Chris Cyborg. Tyron Woodley versus Damian Maia. Tyron Woodley's one of my favorite fighters of all time, and he's more in his prime right now than Damian Maia. He's also he's explosive. He's bigger than Jorge Masvidal. Damian Maia wasn't able to submit Jorge Masvidal, and Jorge Masvidal trains with Tyron Woodley, and Tyron Woodley's bigger than Jorge Masvidal. It was a split decision versus Jorge Masvidal. Some people Jorge Masvidal won the fight. He did more damage, but I actually had the fight for Maia either way. Masvidal's one of my other favorite fighters of all time. So Damian Maia, man, much respect to Damian Maia. He could come out here and get a submission if Tyron Woodley messes up, but I think Tyron Woodley's a very smart fighter. He's coming in here. He's training with the backpack on. He's doing everything he needs to do in his training camp. He's a cerebral fighter. He's going to come in here and do whatever he needs to do to get the win, even if that means not playing into Damian Maia's game. But I do think he's actually going to take chances against Damian Maia. I think Tyron Woodley's going to come in here and get the job done. Daniel Cormier versus Jon Jones. This one would have been a really hard fight if I didn't kind of already know where I was going before I started this. It would have been really hard to pick. Well, let me rephrase that. If Jon Jones wasn't going through so much turmoil outside and inside the octagon, man, it would have been an easier pick for Jon Jones. Just because the fashion of the first fight, Jon Jones dominated Daniel Cormier in the first fight. A unanimous decision wasn't really arguable. But since then, Jon Jones has... whew, he's been through the motherfucking ringer, dog. Jon Jones has been going through some things. And shoosh. Hey, that made me want to hear that Boozy song. I've been going through some things. Anyway, Jon Jones, fucking dick pills, cocaine, estrogen blockers, fucking mother passing away, rest her soul. So much stuff has been going on. He came back after a long layoff versus OSP, didn't look too good. Whew, now he's got another long layoff, pulled out of UFC 200, embarrassed, car wreck, so much stuff's going on. But the biggest thing is the estrogen blockers. That question leaves a lot of questions in Jon Jones' legacy right now. We need to see if Jon Jones looks the same clean as he did before the estrogen blockers, and until a fight after the estrogen blockers, we will not know. So what I'm picking to happen here is Daniel Cormier to come in, get the win somehow. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but I think Daniel Cormier is going to win. It's going to blow up the MMA world, because that's going to turn Daniel Cormier into the greatest fighter of all time. His only loss will be to Jon Jones, and it would be a dirty Jon Jones. He could argue all day long, because Jon Jones beat him before the estrogen blockers, and he's never beat him after the estrogen blockers. So if Daniel Cormier beats Jon Jones, not only does it make Daniel Cormier the greatest fighter of all time, not only does it blow up the MMA world, it also sets up a humongous trilogy match. Ooh, that trilogy would be insane. So I'm picking Daniel Cormier to win for those reasons, and hey, it could go either way. If we're just going off of the first fight, you'd go Jones, but there's a lot more that happened beside the first fight. So I'm going with Daniel Cormier here, and I understand there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with that pick, but I don't really care, motherfucker. Go make your own prediction video or say it in the comments. Do whatever the fuck you want to do. Just don't hate on me for my pick. And somebody's going to say, oh, you're picking Daniel Cormier? Thumbs down, bitch. Thumbs down, you bitch. How about that? So these are my picks. This is a quicker prediction video. I didn't have to do a lot of knowledge. I didn't have to do a lot of history. I didn't have to do all the research, because these fights are so big, you know the research off the top of your heads. Now, the locks of the night on this for me are Cyborg and Manoir, and the other fights, ooh, may the best man win. Gonna be fun as hell. Cannot wait. Backpack, backpack. I'm gonna have to check that shit out again. Alright, I'm about to get to Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. I gotta watch that, man. Sugar Sean O'Malley came off last week. I'm excited to see what happens this week. Gonna watch the Snoop cast. So it is what it is, man. Let the hitters know your UFC 214 predictions are in the comments. Dude.